Don't say that. I had a late one last night, too. Vernon. Well, no towns anymore, but, you know, three villages. Waukesha, Vernon, and Walworth is my other one. And then, that's only about half my work, and then half is other stuff, too.
I'm sorry.
No real issues, but long discussion on breasts. No. Easy money. I said easy money.
Good evening and welcome to the Village of Waukesha on a beautiful summer evening. Tonight is Thursday, August 13th, 2020. We're called to order at 6:30 p.m. and if you would all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll start with item 3, roll call of the Plan Commission. I will call the roll this evening. Was that me?
That was me.
Okay. Commissioner Piala.
Here.
Commissioner Cisney.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
And then I will call the roll of the village board or plan commissioners as well. Trustee Stigler.
Here.
Trustee Durr.
Here.
Trustee German.
Here.
Trustee Kalinsky.
Here.
And I, President Fisher, am present. Item 4 is communications with village residents. I've got one communication tonight, and it's actually an introduction. Sitting at my right-hand side, your left-hand side, as you look forward, is Karen Couillard. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Karen is our new village clerk treasurer. I think we ought to welcome her with a round of applause. I promised I wouldn't embarrass her, but if you want to say anything, you're welcome. And if you want to pass, that's okay too.
I'll just say hello.
It's good enough.
Tonight.
Okay, thank you. You'll hear a lot more from her going forward, I'm sure. Item 5, citizens' comments. Again, this is an opportunity for individuals to address the Plan Commission and the board. We've got a microphone center here. Please come forward. Maybe you can make sure that microphone is on. I'm going to ask anybody who wants to speak, please get close to the microphone so you project. We need your name, slowly, maybe spelled if necessary, and your address, and then proceed to address the Plan Commission and Town Board. Who would like to speak? Welcome.
Hi, I'm Shelley Comer. I live over on Rocky Hills Court and
Pull that microphone down just a little bit. There you go. Thank you.
and the other road is not named yet. It used to be Merle Hills Road. We have a sightline issue. I've talked to you in the past in the last couple months, and I've talked to Jerry from Public Works. Jerry went out and looked at it, and he said, yes, we either need to cut the trees down on Richard Smith's section to the east, or put the stop signs back up on MacArthur. Because at least 3 times a week, everybody that lives on our road and in our court and, oh, let's see, Shaganagi and the rest of the old Merle Hills Road, everybody's having problems where it's going to be a fatality. We're going to get hit on the driver's side. And Jerry said he went and talked to him, and I haven't heard anything since. So this has been going on a couple months, so we just need to kind of know what the plan is.
Sure. If I could, typically, we don't respond to citizens' comments, but I think this is appropriate. If you look on your agenda tonight, and unfortunately, this could be a little bit downstream time-wise, I don't know if you can stay or not, but item 22B is establishing a date and time for members of, the 5 members of the village board here to participate in what I termed a field trip with 1 or more representatives of Waukesha County to review the remnant portions of County Trunk Highway TT. This gets into issues beyond your concern, but they're jurisdictional authority, but it is condition of it, signage. We need to include that on the field trip. That will be a public event. We'll let you know when that's going to take place so you can be there. I mean, that will be a continuation of a public meeting. Hopefully we can set a date to do that before the next meeting in 2 weeks so we can get on with it, okay?
Okay. Yeah, because Jerry went and talked to him, and he said it was fine to cut the trees down.
I understand.
And nothing has happened.
Well, just so we're aware, you're clear, though, that that's a county road.
No, MacArthur is not a county road.
Oh, MacArthur is not.
Yeah, there was stop signs on MacArthur,
Okay.
and then when the bypass went
I thought you were
through,
talking about the
they
remnants of
took the
Merrill
stop signs down.
Hills.
We have a stop sign on our road, like
Yes.
the old Merrill Hills Road, whatever it's gonna be called.
But are the tree concerns
The
on
trees
MacArthur
concern-
or
yeah.
on Merrill Hills?
On MacArthur.
Okay, thank you.
They're
I
on
apologize.
Richard's land to
Okay.
the east.
I understand.
So when you're at the stop sign, you can't see anything.
So there are multiple issues there. We'll get on with it.
Okay.
And we'll endeavor to let you know when that's
Yeah,
going
because
to
Jerry
be.
said they either have to be cut down or the stop signs have to be put back.
Understand, and we will ask Jerry to be present as well. So we're
Okay.
looking at multiple issues. This is one that we certainly need to get at and resolve.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, who's next? Welcome.
Good evening. Good evening, all. First, Karen, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
I'm Chad Vendetti, S35W27650, and I'm speaking in front of this board yet again, my third
Can
trip
I
here.
just, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it will, we, unless the board objects, we have you on the board as an agenda item, okay? We'll give you, unless anybody has reason to object to it, give you opportunity to speak at that time, because it's specifically on the agenda item as 21B. I mean, I'm not preventing you from speaking now, but you can
do
have
what
the
you want.
opportunity
That's up
then.
to you, but I'm going to state what I'm going to state anyway here in this citizens'
Doesn't matter. Are you
so-
sticking around for that part of the meeting, or does it depend on how long it
I
goes?
have no idea how long that'll be.
Fair enough. Okay, proceed.
So, I'm speaking in front of the board yet again, my third trip here. As I believe you are all aware now, this ordinance compliance process or complaint process started over a year ago. In fact, my complaint was submitted to this board a year this week, so this is the 1-year anniversary. Congratulations. In that year, I have page after page of documentation detailing my attempts to get this board to do its job. If you'd like to see them, I have page after page, email after email, documentation, all the information required to submit, and then some. Should a resident be forced to go to these lanes for a simple ordinance violation complaint? You need to ask yourself that. Very recently, there have been several agenda items purportedly address this issue. One of those is on tonight's agenda. These agenda items do not address my concern, or at least have not to date, and there is no need in my mind for such a thing for a simple ordinance violation complaint. The lack of attention and communication by this board on this issue is startling. However, if there were communication problems previously amongst the board, which it seems like there was last time I visited here, that's changed because I did send my letter to all board members, so at least you have my viewpoint of what's occurring regarding the diseased tree. The village board's elected to do a job, then paid to do that job. There's been little action on my complaint, and at this point it appears that continued negligence can only be one of two things: willful or inept. I'm asking yet again for this body to enforce its own ordinances, which were created by good people before you for the benefits of the residents. The process is clear. In fact, I have a copy right here. If you don't have it, I'll be happy to give it to you on the process for an ordinance complaint. The process is clear. The village president, the town chairman, now the village president, because it's been so long, needs to sign off on the complaint and let the Department of Public Works director, in this instance, investigate the complaint. To my knowledge, this has never happened. In a year, it's never happened. I implore this board to move forward with this issue fast. Enough with the confusion and the smoke screens. Follow the process you're compelled to follow. The president should sign the complaint and allow it to move forward. Enough is enough. Do your job. Do your job.
Thank you. We will take that up at item 21D. Who's next? Please come forward.
Sandy Hom, West 230, South 3827, Milky Way Road. I just want to applaud the decision to add Dan Buchholz back to the Plan Commission. It's been a long time coming. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Who's next? Please come forward and give us your name and address and proceed.
Yes, Brandon Carstens, S37W23155, Moyer Way. I would just like to express my concern over the 2 towers planned in town of Waukesha. There seems to be some inconsistency in some of the planning around. Both sit at about 830 feet elevation, but have distinctly different heights. My main concern there is the Five Diamonds area due to the number of constructions there with the large buildings and the lights. You know, this is another huge obstruction to our view, as well as other residents in the area. And I would just like that to be under consideration to do what's best for the community.
I should have, just a quick thing, I probably should have impolitely interrupted you before you started, okay? Part of the reason being, we're going to be into that fairly quickly. There is a public hearing on that matter. Hopefully you could stick around for that, and if you can, probably going to ask you to re-speak at that point in time, because then it'll be part of the record of the public hearing. At this point in time, what you've said isn't part of the public hearing, because under citizens' comments. So that's my fault, and maybe anybody else who's here to speak on that issue. It's a public hearing. You'll have the opportunity. That would probably be a more appropriate time. Thank you. Okay, who's next? Anybody else? Okay, if there's nothing further for citizens' comments, we'll move on. Item 6 is open meeting law and compliance check. The statement reads as follows. The agenda was posted and distributed to all news media requesting notification in accordance with the open meeting laws and posted on or before, and I got to make sure I get this right, on the agenda August 12th, 2020. That was for the amended agenda. So that was actually yesterday. Upon information, belief that's a true statement. Does anybody have any reason to take issue with my representation that that's a true statement? Okay, then we'll move on. We have several sets of minutes here. We have minutes of March 12th, 2020, June 11th, 2020, and July 9th, 2020. We need to take separate actions on those, and I would indicate some of these are kind of old meeting minutes, so we've had some turnover and changeover in people on some of those. We can go to the approval of those. I personally have some concerns about March 12th and June 11th because I think there's some corrections that need to be made in those. I don't know if we want to spend the time to do it tonight, but what's anybody's pleasure? Let's take March 12th, and those are meeting minutes of Joint Plan Commission and Town Board meeting. Has everybody had a chance to completely digest those? Well, I'm going to, at the moment, because I think there's some things I haven't fully digested all of that, but I would move to table those until the meeting, first meeting in September, and I would so move. Is there a second to the motion to table? So I made the motion, was seconded by Commissioner Sisney. I think we all vote on that. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. And the same thing, without belaboring it, I believe there are some corrections that need to be made on the minutes for June 11th. For that meeting as well, I would move to table the approval of those minutes or consideration of them until the first meeting in September. Is there a second?
So is your intention to make those corrections and then re-present them, or?
Yes, to bring it back with those corrections, yes.
So will you do the corrections in some kind of a red line or bold or italic, or since we have them printed already?
Sure.
So we know what
I'd be
you
happy
changed?
to, absolutely.
That'd be great, thank you.
Sure. Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Do you need a second?
I guess we did not get one, indeed we
I will
do.
give you a second.
So I made the motion table, trustee Stigler seconded the motion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, then we're on to meeting minutes for July 9th, which are also Joint Plan Commission Village Board. Everybody had a chance to get through those, and are there any issues or questions? I might simply note on that while you're looking at that, because those are relatively recent minutes, they reflect that all 5 members of the village board and all of the 3 citizen members of the Plan Commission were in attendance, so I think it's the very group that's here tonight. Any additions or corrections, or are you prepared to take action on those minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes of the July 9th minutes of the Joint Plan Commission and Village Board.
Is there a second?
I can second that.
Okay, I got the motion by trustee Stigler, and the second was Commissioner White. I think these masks even affect hearing a little bit, so I gotta be a little bit careful here, but we got that right? All right, any discussion on the motion to approve those minutes? Then all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Now we're on to the meat of the agenda, and we've got a number of discussion and possible action items. Item 8 is discussion and possible action on site plan of operation, including the ADA compliance submittal request for Amy Hudson, owner, Sunset Self-Storage, located at Lot 2, Highway 164, tax key WAKT 14329980004. Item A is discussion by the Plan Commission Village Board. Item B is possible action by the Plan Commission. Item C is possible action by the Village Board. This has been on the agenda a number of times before. As I have previously, I am going to recuse myself from this matter and step out of the room. And then the Board and the Plan Commission here, you need to make a motion to appoint somebody to be the temporary chairperson of the meeting for this portion of the meeting and proceed from that point forward.
I'll make a motion to appoint trustee Stigler to the temporary chairman of the Joint Plan Commission and Village Board.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Amy, are you here somewhere?
I'm a representative for them.
Okay,
I've been here.
all right. Got mask on, I can't tell who's here and who's not anymore, so. Sean, do you want to refresh us on this? And we've been through this as a third time now, so.
I won't spend too much time on, unless there's questions, but just a quick, a brief history. Originally back in March, the Plan Commission and Board and Waukesha County staff held a rezoning, a joint rezoning, because it was split zone between town zoning at the time and county zoning. We approved, or we recommended approval of the zoning change. We also recommended approval on June 11th for the site plan and plan of operation that goes with it for the self-storage units. This got caught up in the change from a town to a village, and at the time, we made recommendations for our rezoning as well as our site plan of operation that it was contingent on actions by Waukesha County that are no longer necessary. And so last month, we redid the rezoning on our own without county input and without restrictions or requirements of county approval. And the site plan of operation would have been done last month. It was already approved back when. We would have piggybacked that, but it wasn't noticed properly. And so today is mostly a formality unless there's additional questions for approval of the site plan of operation. I do have a few changes to my staff report comments. They're in red, starting on the bottom of page 2. One of the things that's being requested is there's some ADA requirements for accessibility for the storage units. And so the petitioner's asking to take a look at that because they will impact a part of the architecture, and it's sort of the northeasternmost building. And I'll just pull up a map overhead. So this building here, we required for where the sight line is visible from the property, finished materials on this side that also wrap around the south side of the building. There will now be a swing door on that south side that's going to be required on the north and south sides of the building. So that will impact the architecture somewhat. I don't have much in terms of details of what that would look like, but this kind of shows the location of the swing door at the very, would be the southwest corner of that, the southwest corner of that particular building. So that would, there wouldn't be the band of materials at the bottom there where the door happens. It's very minor, but we thought we should bring it to your attention. And so with that, I've added that condition in the staff report that the materials have been updated regarding ADA compliance. And then on page 3, I've struck the conditions that had to do with county action on a number of items. So unless there's questions for me, that's all I have.
So this is pretty much what we approved the last time.
We've approved it
except
last
for
time. The only changes are the ADA door, the swing doors. They're in process. They've since supplied the, they're still in talks with DOT for improvements. I know they're very, very close to getting their stormwater approvals, which is a condition of our approval. They've already secured access through Green Man Landscaping, through that access easement for that secondary point that's required by the fire chief. So we have written approval of that as well. So their ducks are in a row. They're almost, they're almost done with stormwater. They're still talking to DOT, but our requirements are basically anything the DOT is going to require is going to be a requirement of this as well. So
is the signage included in
the signage was
that approved?
Yes,
by the board last time? Okay.
the signage was approved previously.
All right. Just want to make sure we get
Because
this
that was done independent of the county, because we didn't require any county approvals for the signage,
Yeah.
like the rezone and site plan would have been.
Just want to make sure we get everything this time.
That-
there's
that's a
not
great-
something left
that's a
for
great
the-
point.
you know,
That's
that we
right.
got everything
So
covered.
this should be the last time they come back unless they change something.
Okay. Do you have anything to say, add to what Sean has said? Okay. The Plan Commission, anybody have questions of the board of what's going on here? Al?
It's just a quick one. Did we, I was just trying to find this real quick, going to have them pave that entranceway? I guess that's what was.
Yeah, the phasing plan was last time we took a look at it, was all sorted out and buttoned up.
The paving part, you mean it's
The
paved?
the phasing plan as development happens.
Right, okay. Anybody else, any comments? Okay, in that case, a motion is in order, if somebody wants to make that motion. If not, I will do it. I will move to approve the site plan of operation, including the ADA compliance, submittal requested by Amy Hudson, owner of Sunset Self-Storage located at Lot 2, Highway 164. That's key WAKT 143-299-8004. Is there a second to that?
I second it.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to approve site plan of operation for Amy Hudson and Sunset Self-Storage. Is there any more discussion? Time to vote. All those in favor, say aye. All opposed? Carries.
I'll make a recommendation to accept a motion to accept the recommendation of the Plan Commission regarding the site plan of operation for the self-storage.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded by the board to accept the recommendation of the Plan Commission. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay, Mr. President can be brought back in.
Okay, please have the minutes reflect that I returned to the meeting at 6:55 PM, and even backing up a bit, if you would have the minutes reflect the time at which I left, we can probably pick that up from the YouTube and work backwards. I'm assuming then,
And Mr. Chairman,
sure,
before you move forward, I'll be stepping down for items 9, 10, and 11 this evening.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, very good. We'll let it reflect that you've stepped away at 6:56 PM. Thank you, trustee Durr. Item number 9 is hearing number 1, and I will read it. Notice is hereby given that a joint public hearing involving the Village of Waukesha Plan Commission and the Village and the Waukesha Village Board will be held on Thursday, August 13th, 2020, beginning at 6:30 PM at the Waukesha Village Hall, located at W250 S3567 Center Road, Waukesha, Wisconsin, to hear proposed conditional use for petitioner Keith Nyman, agent, Verizon, located at Infinity Fields, W234 S3555 Les Paul Parkway, tax key WAKT 1352007, to construct a 190-foot monopole cell tower with 5-foot lightning rod above for the purposes of telecommunication services for Verizon Wireless and other wireless carriers / service providers in the market. The description of the property is Lot 7, Deerfield Estates, part of the southeast 1/4 town, 6 north, range 19 east. At this time, I'm going to open the public hearing, and I think the very first thing that I would like to do is simply have whoever is here representing the petitioner simply acknowledge your presence. We're not going to have you participate at the moment, but if you would just come and you can acknowledge your presence, tell us who you are, and then we'll proceed from there. We'll get to you later.
Good evening. My name is Claude Krafchek. I'm an attorney representing Diamond Communications. This application is actually from Keith Nyman as agent for Diamond Communications. They will be the landlord for Verizon, will be the carrier operating on this facility.
So you were here representing their interests
I'm
tonight.
here representing Diamond Communications, which in turn represents, is looking out for Verizon, their tenant here.
Okay, we'll be back to you in a bit. Thank you very much. Okay, I think open the public hearing. We need to put some information out there before we start taking public comment, and I'm assuming we're going to start with you, Planner Malarkey.
Sure.
Okay, take it away.
So the petitioner and property owners are requesting approval of a conditional use permit and a site plan of operation to construct a new wireless telecommunication facility. That includes the cell tower and the ground facilities. This would be, for now, for Verizon Wireless on the Five Diamonds property, also known as Infinity Fields Baseball Park. The petitioners provide information stated that We Energies in ATC are currently not renewing leases for cell facilities and antennas on their their transmission towers. And so this is one of those that will be eliminated from the nearest tower, which happens to be at 1507 East Sunset Drive, which is about 0.42 miles to the northeast. And by nearest tower, I just mean the nearest tower with an antenna on it operated by Verizon Wireless. What they're proposing is they're proposing to basically locate the equipment, the tower and the equipment in the parking lot near the northeast corner of the site, just east of the wetlands and then the trash receptacles and so on. And so essentially, as mentioned, it's a 190-foot monopole tower with a 5-foot lightning rod, used for Verizon at first, but with room for up to 4 additional communication service providers with up to 5 total separate antenna arrays and associated base station equipment. The monopole itself would be in a separate compound from the rest of the equipment. I'll just zoom in to the information provided. And so the antenna itself is in a 15 by, the monopole tower with antennas in a 15 by 15 foot fence compound, and then the ground equipment would be in an adjacent 18 foot by 30 foot fence compound just to the northeast across the parking lot. Cabling between the two would run in a 8-foot easement for that purpose. Access to the facility would be through the parking lot to Les Paul Parkway via a 20-foot access easement across the parking lot. And then they would be also providing future space on the ground, in the ground equipment for additional carriers. So here's the whole site. Here's their antenna. Here's the ground equipment for Verizon, and then that would be expanded if necessary for additional providers in the future. That's an 18 by 30 foot walled compound right now. It's brick. And then all facilities that are shown are west of the existing ATC WEPCO high tension power line easement on the site. There's specific requirements for applications for new cell towers in Wisconsin, ones that we have in our ordinance and ones that the state has in the statutes. And so they're fairly general, but they're prescriptive as to what it's required. And so when they provide their application, I reviewed it. I determined they provided the information that was required by the state and by Village of Waukesha ordinances. And the application itself was submitted on July 9th. I determined it to be complete on July 16th. You should also know that the state requires that action be taken on new cell towers within 90 days of a complete application. So their application submittal date is what we work from, and so that would be October 7th. We'd have to either approve or deny the conditional use permit and site plan of operation for this. The state statutes also outline a series of what municipalities can't do or are not limitations, basically, when you review cell towers in the state. And so on page 3 of my staff report talks about local municipality limitations. I basically summarize what, taken from the statutes, what we're bound by when reviewing these specific applications. This is currently zoned, the property is currently zoned P1 Park. The proposed site plan would meet all setback, offset, and area requirements. There's also wetlands on the property, and they're sort of to the southwest of the site. You can see that the blue line is the 75-foot offset from the wetlands, which is required by our ordinance. They are outside of the requirements of the setback, and that delineation was done in May of this year, so it's current. In terms of parking, as you can see, we'd be eliminating one parking stall for the tower itself. You can see it overlaps one parking stall here in the lot. The proposed ground equipment for Verizon wouldn't eliminate any parking stalls because there isn't any parking there. But the future locations of the ground equipment for other service providers could take up an additional 5 spaces, so up to 6 spaces could be lost from the parking lot itself. I'd note that there are currently 381 parking stalls on the north side of the site and then there are 86 stalls that were added as part of the indoor training facility further to the south. And so those are in a total of 467 stalls. We did look, I couldn't find any information as to the requirements of the baseball diamonds and the parking that's associated with it. I know our ordinances do not specify any specific requirement for ball diamonds or that. So it's going to be up to the Plan Commission and the board to determine whether or not the loss of those 6 spaces is going to be a detriment to the use in the operation of the site itself. We recently added, back in January of this year, we added some new provisions in our conditional use ordinance for wireless telecommunication facilities with the help of Attorney Macy. And so all those requirements are in place, and as far as we know, the ordinance addresses, it regulates as much as we possibly can regulate in terms of cell towers. And so I won't go through each of these provisions independently. I guess I'd expect these are all conditions of approval, conditions of the conditional use permit. I would anticipate that the petitioner would need to provide evidence that they meet or intend to meet each of these specific requirements for our ordinance. One of the requirements is basically that this is one of the, normally towers have to be set back whatever's required for the district itself. And so a lot of times it's 20 feet or 30 feet from the property lines. The state does allow an exception for that if you have an ordinance that states that for where it's adjacent to residential districts or districts that will allow single-family residential, you can have it be set back at least as far as the height of the tower. So in this case, 190 feet, and our ordinance does require that, and so the location of their tower is at least 190 feet off the east property line, which happens to be in the city of Waukesha, but it is land that's planned and zoned for residential use. I don't want to get into too many details here until after maybe the presentation by the petitioner. I know Engineer Janelli also had a couple of comments. And also, if you note in my staff report, I don't have any conditions listed. I did discuss this with President Fisher, and we came to the agreement that, after the public hearing, after we at least hear the initial comments from the petitioner and the public, we'd be able to take that and turn it around to draft conditions based on our ordinance and what we hear tonight. So that's all I have, unless there's additional questions.
Okay, I think that's a good start, to be sure. We'll be back to you in a bit, but you already queued it up for him. Let's let Engineer Janelli give his report, please.
Surely, I will say my comments are pretty innocuous and basically refer to needing to supply all the easements that they've listed in their drawings, copies of those to the village. There's permits associated with it. I think my report might also be better suited for when we speak about the site plan of operation at that time. I think they're pretty technical in nature anyway.
Even though you described your comments as
there's a few others.
pretty innocuous, I'm assuming you're expecting to get paid tonight for being here? Okay.
Assuming we get to the site plan of operation.
All right, I just wanted to make sure on that. Okay. All right. Enough of that. Let's go quickly, and I want to make sure that get factual information, I think, before we proceed with public comments. Mr. Krawczyk, did I say that right? I hope I got close. I butcher names fairly regularly, but come back, correct me on your name, and then if you would like to make your presentation, please proceed.
That was very good. That was the Americanized version.
Well,
In
give us
Polish, we say Krawczyk, but you can say Krawczyk.
I might do either one, but go ahead.
All right. Thank you, folks, for listening to us tonight. I would echo Mr. Malarkey's comments. I think he submitted a good summary of what we're trying to do here. Once again, I'm representing Diamond Communications, which is a tower developer. They will be the landlord and lease space on this tower as monopole to Verizon, and there's room for 4 additional carriers should T-Mobile or AT&T or anybody else want to come along. There's room for them on this. The application was submitted on July 9th, and it was complete at that time. It meets all of your requirements as well as the state statutes. The reason we're building a new structure, the new monopole, is WEPCO has got their high-tension line all along this corridor, as you know. And 25 years ago, when communication systems were being built out, wireless communications were being built out in Waukesha County, Verizon and other carriers were encouraged and in fact did utilize existing WEPCO facilities for their antenna structures. So the existing structure is located at the intersection of Sunset and 164. It's in the back of a parking lot. There is a multi-tenant office space there. I think First Weber is there, a dentist is there, some other folks are there. The WEPCO tower in the back of that property has a monopole through the center, which now holds Verizon's antenna array. It's been there for almost 25 years. Unfortunately, WEPCO has now made a determination for all carriers that they are not going to renew leases. Our 25 years is come up, and these are sites I worked on 25 years ago, so it shows me that I've been in the business a little while here. So WEPCO has advised us by letter dated July 2017, which is part of the application packet. By the way, each of you should have the full packet that was submitted. There is a letter from WEPCO dated July something of 2017, I think it's the 9th, where they indicate that they will not be entertaining further renewals of their leases for these high-tension towers. So not just Verizon, but other carriers are looking for alternatives at this point in time. Ideally, Verizon would have liked to have built a new monopole, or had Diamond build a new monopole for them, right adjacent to the existing WEPCO site at the corner of Sunset and 164, and again in the back parking lot of this office building, multi-tenant office building. Unfortunately, that property owner was not willing to enter into a lease and was not interested in having a new monopole constructed on their property. So Diamond and Verizon had to look elsewhere, and I'm going to submit right now, and I'll pass around. I'll start with Mr. Malarkey. If you could pass along, I'd appreciate it. This is a map showing Verizon's existing locations in this proximity. And I'll wait till everybody gets it, but what I've identified here is the existing antenna facility that's now on the WEPCO pole or WEPCO tower at Sunset and 164. That's identified by a big black arrow that's highlighted in green, and you'll see it as you come around. And then if you look at, there's a little box that says VZW, that's Verizon Wireless Sunset. That's their existing location. Again, we can't be there anymore. We have to find something else. In addition to the letter from WEPCO, the application packet also included a letter from an RF engineer working for Verizon who provided what they call their search ring. And the search ring is the area where ideally they would like to relocate their antenna array to provide comparable service to what they're providing today. Unfortunately, and by the way, that letter also states, as required by law, that the engineer has surveyed the area in that search ring, and there are no existing structures available for co-location within that search ring. The only structures available are the WEPCO towers, which we can't use anymore. So there's nothing of significant height or sufficient height to accommodate an antenna array in that search ring. Unfortunately, we could not locate something right in the search ring. And that's why we're at the baseball field here. If you look at the search ring map, you'll see that the baseball fields are just a little bit outside and low. That's my baseball call for you tonight. But the RF engineer took a swing at it anyway. Wasn't a home run, but I think they got a triple out of it. So this is a location that is not ideal, but it's pretty good for Verizon's standpoint. And that's all we can get at this point, is something that's pretty good. So, I mentioned existing structures. There is a water tank located further to the south and east on Hunter Road and Guthrie Road. That's just outside of a residential subdivision. That is significantly further to the southeast, and I show on the map I just distributed, that's highlighted in blue. It's a red X highlighted in blue. You can see it's significantly further to the south and to the east, and closer to another Verizon facility known as the Viking facility. That's along Highway Y. You can see it on the map there. So if the water tower was available for us, and we don't believe that it is, it doesn't work for us anyway. It's out too far outside the search ring, and it's too close to another existing Verizon structure. So it would create some overlap, and what we're trying to do here is replicate the service that we have been providing for the last 25 years. So you'll see, again, the map has 3 colors. The yellow is where we're planning to go at the ball fields. The green is where we are today, and the blue is where the water tank is located. There's also a purple line that runs from the south to the north and then to the east. That's roughly the existing WEPCO power line. And you can see that 25 years ago, Verizon pretty much built its system out in this area to overlap with or coincide with that existing WEPCO facility. In fact, 5 of their 7 sites, let's see, 1, 2, 3, or 5 of the 6 existing sites along this purple line are on WEPCO facilities. We just finished and had many evenings with Mr. Macy and Mr. Malarkey down in the village of Vernon. We just finished siting and got approval for a relocation of another antenna facility that was located on another WEPCO pole on Artesian Road. That's shown at the bottom of the map. So we're trying to follow this same pattern, because that's the pattern that's been developed, and that's the pattern where development has occurred over the last 25 years. And that's the service that we're trying to continue to maintain here. We also think that this is a great site. In spite of the fact that it's not a home run, we think it's a great site for several reasons. It's surrounded by wetlands on 3 sides, to the north, to the west, to the south. To the east, as Mr. Malarkey mentioned, there is a residentially zoned parcel in the city of Waukesha that's currently undeveloped. However, we're well over 200 feet away from that lot line, and there is a significant buffer of a tree line along that property. And anybody who builds in that subdivision in the future is going to know that they're building with a WEPCO transmission tower that's visible, and they'll be building with, hopefully after your approval tonight, a monopole that's visible. So we think it's a good spot for that reason. Also, it's off the road, and it's really a good, thank you very much, that makes a big difference. It's off the road, and it's nowhere near any existing homes. The closest home, which is near the Jehovah's Witness Hall, is, I believe that's on Milky Way Road. That's about 1,300 feet away from this location. That's a quarter of a mile. Those folks probably won't see anything different than they're seeing today with the existing WEPCO transmission towers. I believe the gentleman who spoke earlier is going to speak again, Mr. Ham. This site is about 1,700 feet, or a third of a mile away from his property line. The ball fields already have a high-tension tower there. I don't know if Sean can zoom in on that or not, but there is an existing high-tension tower as part of the WEPCO string within feet of this.
Yeah, it's on the south part of the property. I'm zooming in now. It doesn't show up on this aerial. Maybe it does.
It's along the east side. You can see the
Right,
kind
here
of
it is.
lines
There it
there.
is.
Those lines are the transmission
Yep,
lines.
this is it.
The electric transmission lines. So this existing WEPCO tower is there. We're gonna be further away from the homes than that tower. That WEPCO tower is 156 feet right now. What we're planning to build is 190 or 195 with the lightning rod. It's not going to be required to be lit. It's under 200 feet, so the FAA does not require aviation lighting for this. So it will be unlit. We think, based on the fact that it's further over, it's going to appear no higher than the existing WEPCO transmission towers to those folks who are to the south and to the east. Let's see, what else? Oh, there's, in addition to the WEPCO tower on this site, obviously it's the Five Diamonds ball field. There are light standards all the way around the ball fields that are about 80 feet tall. And those are pretty intense lighting when there's games going on. Our facility will be unlit, so it's not going to be standing out over there. We explained that the base station is going to be across the driveway, and there is an easement. What Mr. Malarkey didn't mention is that will all be underground. So anything going from the base station to the tower will be underground. The base station itself, we proposed that it should be a brick or block structure, much like the existing trash enclosure there. We're happy to do that. Of course, there has to be a gate to get in and out, just like the trash dumpster enclosure. The monopole itself is about 60 inches in diameter. And that's about twice the size of the existing light standards. They're about 30 inches in diameter. Diamond and Verizon could do one of three different things regarding the monopole itself. Frankly, we're recommending that it not be surrounded at all. There is nothing protruding from the bottom of the monopole itself. There will be climbing rungs that are higher up, but those would be at least 15 feet off the ground. So the pole itself could sit there without any fence or without any enclosure, and it would be no different than the existing light standards that now light the ball fields. That's option one, and we think that's the best option, but we're willing to follow the village's recommendation. It could also be fenced with a chain link fence and barbed wire on top. Frankly, we think that's more of a attractive nuisance than the tower itself. We don't have problems with kids climbing fences, but certainly when there's fences around and kids are running around because their older brothers are playing ball, you don't know what they might get into. So we'd rather not do a fence, but we could do that if you'd like. The third option is to do a wall around it, just like the base station. But again, we think that having the monopole outside of it, not enclosed, would be the best option. So, but we'll let you decide on that one. I mentioned the monopole will accommodate 4 additional carriers in the future. Right now, there's nobody standing in line, but Diamond is a sharp company, and they're building this facility with the hope and the expectation that they'll have additional tenants besides Verizon in the future. There is also within the base station enclosure, there will be a diesel-powered backup generator. It's only for backup purposes only. The tower itself, the antennas itself, and the base station equipment runs off of power that WEPCO supplies, just like they do to this building. The generator is for backup purposes only. In many cases, when there's a storm or other power outage, cell phones are the only means of communication. So the generator provides backup service for that. It's rarely used, but if we have an intense storm where your power goes down, you can rest assured that you'll still have cell phone service. because of the backup generator here. That generator is only tested about once a week. That could be done during business hours. Again, it doesn't go off at night unless there is an emergency and power is out. We provided in the packet some information about the noise levels generated by the generator. Frankly, no one's going to hear it in this location on the parking lot unless you happen to be parked right next to it. And then you're going to walk to the ball field and it won't matter to you. But the generator sound is only about the equivalent within 30 feet. It's the equivalent of someone running a dishwasher or running a shower. It's very low intensity. And the further away you get, you won't hear anything at all. So we think we've submitted a complete application. Your ordinances do allow in the P1 district as a conditional use. Your ordinances do allow communications facilities such as this. Your conditional use requirements have all been satisfied. And we think we've fully satisfied the Wisconsin statute, 660404. What I'd like to point out there is Mr. Malarkey, I think, summarized all of these in his report, but I want to highlight 3 of them. Municipalities may not prohibit a communications facility because they have an emergency backup system, and they may not require battery backup. So just so you know, your hands are a little bit tied by the state on that regard. You also may not disapprove this because you think another location would be more suitable. It's possible that there's some place else we could have built a tower, but there's no place we could locate without building a new structure. And as I mentioned, most of the lands south of the existing WEPCO facility are wetlands. We can't build there. We would have preferred to have been closer to that facility, but this one works for us. So, you know, someone could say, well, why didn't you go here? Why didn't you go there? Well, the short answer is we couldn't find a willing landowner in an area that was better than this. Finally, I want you to remember that your state statute prohibits municipalities from denying these permits based on aesthetic concerns. You know, we've been to a lot of these hearings. A lot of folks think it's going to be the ugliest thing in the world. Frankly, they're not all that obtrusive. Once it's built, I think very few people are going to notice it's there. It's adjacent to the existing WEPCO line. It's in an area where, you know, we're a quarter of a mile away from the nearest home. So we don't think aesthetics should be a concern, but we also want to point out that the state doesn't allow you to consider that. So finally, Mr. Malarkey mentioned you've got 90 days after the submission, which the submission was July 9th, so that's October 7th would be that deadline. We hope to get it sooner than that. In fact, we're asking for you to consider and approve this evening. Lastly, I wanted to mention the Federal Telecommunications Act. You probably are aware, and Mr. Macy can instruct you on this. Municipalities are not allowed to consider perceived health concerns. We often come to these meetings and residents think that this is going to be something that's detrimental to them and their families. The fact is, everybody who lives in the subdivision off Hunter Road has lived with 2 antenna arrays on that water tank for many years now. So that's out of bounds in order to consider those kinds of issues, and we want you to remember that. I'm happy to answer any questions. I think we've got everything in order, and again, we would ask for your approval this evening.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. We may invite you back up later, but where we're going to head off to next is take comments from the public. We'll actually give the public the chance to offer comments before the Plan Commission or the Village Board gets significantly involved. If you come up to make public comment, you come to the center microphone here, please get close to the microphone. Again, we're asking for your name and address, so we will have a record who's speaking. Going to ask everybody to be respectful. You will address your comments to the front of the room here, if you will, to the Plan Commission, to the village board, not to the petitioner. You can make comments, you can ask some questions. I'm going to ask everybody to speak but one time till everyone's had an opportunity to speak. The other thing, if you dive into our ordinance, it basically says the procedure on this is really to take comments from those who are in support of the request first, and then go to those who are not in support of it. We'll kind of follow that, but that usually falls apart pretty quickly, so we won't rigidly adhere to that. But is there someone, the public, who would like to come forward and speak in favor of this request for the conditional use permit? Okay. Come on, get right to the microphone, please.
We do have other folks here from Verizon and from representing Verizon and Diamond Towers. They don't need to come up now. Obviously, they're in support, but they are available to answer questions
Okay.
if they come up. So
Fair enough.
we'd like to reserve that right.
Thank you very much. Understood. Okay, anyone who wants to come forward and speak in favor of the proposal? Okay, then are there any individuals who want to come up and speak in opposition to the proposal? Or I guess even if you simply are not disposed one way or the other, you're seeking information, want to make comment, I mean, you're welcome as well. So microphone's open for anyone who wants to come forward at this time. Well, we won't belabor the point. Did you want to offer your comments? I told you before, if you really want them part of the public record, they need to be here at the public hearing. So even if it's repetitive, please proceed.
Yeah, I just wanted to state my objection.
Give once again name and address, please.
Brandon Karstens, S37W23155, Moyer Way. With the exception of the house up by the Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm probably the second closest house here. My objection, and I understand all the things that have been said previously, and I'm not going to object to any of them. I understand the legal requirements here, is primarily around the visibility. I know that we can't object against it, but I would ask that some consideration is taken as far as the height and perhaps a slightly further distance to reduce the impact to property values. Five Diamonds has had a significant impact with some of the more recent buildings on our property, and we just like to mitigate that as much as possible as this moves forward.
Thank you very much. Who else would like to come forward? You're invited to do so at this time. Name, address, and your comments, please.
Sandy Hom, West 230, South 3827, Milky Way Road. I have a couple questions. Well, one is a question. I'm interested in knowing, maybe it, obviously doesn't matter, nothing matters, but what is the height of the pole that's currently in use at the Webco site on the corner, as opposed to 190 feet? And as far as parking goes, anyone who drives by the facility ever, when there's activity there is parking off the parking lot facing 164 on what is either the right-of-way or the grass. And so it seems to me that there's already a shortage of parking, and I can't imagine taking away any stalls for a facility that's already parking off the parking lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who's next? I'll indicate to you, if there's nobody at this point in time, I mean, we will still allow you to offer comments, and we're going to go to the Plan Commission, to the village board. If things occur to you or some of that conversation spurs comments you'd like to make, you'll have another chance. So, seeing nobody else coming forward to the public microphone, Plan Commission members and trustees, board members, comments or questions from you, please.
I want to reiterate what Mr. Hom asked about the height of the existing pole that's being replaced by this and the difference. And my concern was also the parking spots. I do remember when we did Five Diamonds that there was issues about having enough parking spots then. And I've been past there also, and they're parking on the grass on every place along the road there and stuff. So I kind of question the need to take up any more parking spots for this, but I'm not against the monopole. I guess it's kind of what we have to do, but I think we need to, you know, protect our existing facilities there the way they were laid out and what we expected them to do. So I got the same questions that he had, so.
Okay. Thank you. We'll get an answer to that question momentarily. Who else would like to ask another question or make a comment?
I have a
at this time?
question.
Please.
Also, where are there other monopoles in the area that Verizon or Diamond has erected? And are those monopoles enclosed by fencing? And if they are not enclosed, this particular location bothers me a little bit in that there's a lot more children in this. I mean, this is where you attract children. And a lot of children are bored right now with what they want to do. But where's the insurance on it? If there is no fencing, how is the insurance covered? Is it just covering just whoever climbs the pole? How is the insurance written? For both the owner of the property as well as for Verizon, for the protection of the children.
That brings up a comment I forgot to mention too before, is the fencing. I adamantly believe it has to be fenced around the bottom of that pole, because kids are gonna, you know, play around and climb around it, whatever, and I just can't fathom the idea of not having that thing enclosed and keeping people, just the general public, away from it as far as I'm concerned. But you get some adults can be stupid sometimes too on these kind of things, so I just think it ought to be fenced.
I don't know how easy it is to drive around it too, you know, vehicles, whatever, if there's no fencing protection.
Okay, as long as we got a couple questions out there, why don't the representative petitioner or whoever else is with your group, why don't you come forward and see if you might address those questions, and then we'll proceed on. I think you probably got those in hand. One is height of the existing pole, and the other issues about enclosure and examples of that.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Peter Schau, S-C-H-A-U. I'm here representing Verizon Wireless. So, as Attorney Krawczyk mentioned, the existing site, the height of the Verizon antennas on top of that tower are mounted at about 156-foot center line. So the difference in the proposed height is about 30 feet. And the reason being for that is, as Claude mentioned, as we pull down out of that search ring, in order to maintain to try to achieve the same performance existing site, RF engineer did need a higher height to offset the changes in location and how the site operates. So that's why this tower is going to be up about 30 feet higher.
Could I add to that if co-location is important, and I believe it is under the state statute and under your ordinances, there has to be sufficient height for the next carriers to come along. So Verizon is leading the pack, they get to go at the top, but somebody else will come along at 180 and someone at 170 and someone at 160 hopefully. So that height is necessary for co-location as well as performance. And then the other question was regarding the enclosure. We're happy again to do any of those options. We do think that having no enclosure is the best, but if you want a fence there, we'll put it there. The reason we suggest that you don't want an enclosure is right now the WEPCO towers are lattice towers. Those are like the Eiffel Tower. They're much easier to climb. This is a monopole. It's exactly that, a pole with a fairly wide base, but it's no different than a light pole or a telephone pole that are not fenced in. So right now it'd be very easy for someone to climb up the existing WEPCO lattice tower. It's not so easy to climb up a monopole, especially when the climbing rungs will be starting at 15 feet. So we're happy to do whatever the preference is, but we would recommend that you not have it fenced.
I have a follow-up question to that, if I couldn't. I know you've submitted abundance of information. We've got a large number of sheets with very technical drawings and that type of thing, and I know they show some of these things about what you talk. Would you have photographs of some representative examples of fencing or wall enclosure or no enclosure, that type of thing? Are there existing facilities that you had photographs like that you could show as representative
We certainly
examples?
could submit them, but I don't believe I brought any with me. I'm not sure if anybody else did.
Well, I wasn't necessarily asking tonight,
Yeah, we could
okay, but I
submit
mean,
them.
if this were to carry forward, would you be able to provide such a thing
Absolutely.
so we could have some representative examples?
Absolutely. And again, the one thing I didn't mention about the enclosure is this site's a little different in that the monopole will be freestanding. Normally, we get, as we did in the town of Vernon, a 50-foot by 50-foot parcel with the monopole in the center of that, and then all the base stations are around it, inside of a fenced compound. So yes, we typically do fence the monopoles at other sites, but that's because it's one location, if you will, as opposed to this, where the property owner prefers that we go to the east with the base station equipment and run the cables underground. So again, there's a little difference here, but we're happy to do whatever the village would like in this regard.
Okay, I've got a couple follow-up questions, but I want to give others the opportunity to go first. Commissioner Sisney, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question. On page 8, item number 11, anti-climbing measures required. Planner Malarkey has indicated that ladder rungs on towers shall be placed a minimum of 20 feet above the ground. Do you have a problem with 15 versus 20?
No.
Okay.
When the technicians arrive, they have a little bit of a lift that takes
Yes.
them up to where they need to go, so
Okay.
that's fine.
So is that possibly a condition, Sean, for consideration that you could take note of?
So all of these conditions, basically, from our ordinance will become conditions of the permit,
Understood.
including the 20-foot rung, lowest rung.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments from trustees or plan commission?
Yes, I have another question.
Sure, go.
Regarding the monopole and the other equipment, is it just a matter of preference that the owner did not want them consolidated to one location so that one fence can go around it and you have one area?
Yes, I believe it was the owner's preference, and
It wasn't an engineering requirement
no,
or?
we prefer, frankly, to have one compound.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to maintain it when the base station equipment is right next to it, inside of it. So we're accommodating the landowner in this regard, and then that's, by the way, to help minimize the loss of parking.
Really?
Absolutely, because the location, I don't know if you can show it here, for the base station that is going to be built initially for Verizon is not there's no parking there now.
Yeah.
So there's a light standard there. We'll be next to that light standard. You can see the existing parking spaces below. We're not taking up any parking there. If we were gonna do a bigger compound, a 50 by 50, we'd have to take up not only more parking spaces, but probably driving lanes there, which was not appealing to the landowner. So right now, again, when Verizon comes, all you're gonna lose is 2 spaces for the monopole. It's on this side, on the west side.
I believe it's just one.
Oh, it's
There's one
one.
space
There you
right
go.
here, yeah.
This side is gonna be the base station for Verizon, where it's the darker lines. And then those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces, or 5 spaces may be used in the future if AT&T or T-Mobile or somebody else comes along.
Who else has a question or comment from the plan commission or the village board? Commissioner White, please. I'm sorry, Attorney Macy, or indeed you as well?
I just got a couple for you. I'm with a lot of other people that 6 space loss. I have concern with that, just so understand that. The enclosure, with the amount of kids and stuff there, I definitely would, if this would pass, would want some kind of enclosure. And My recommendation would be a wall versus a fence so the kids can't climb it. Other question is there a color on this pole? Do you have a color picked out?
It's just aluminum, so
Okay.
it's,
Because in the past, we've had, I know that we've had them colored, painted, sky blue
well,
in the past. Just curiosity or
I'll be
whatever.
honest with you, the problem with painting them is, number one, it doesn't really make a visual difference. It doesn't blend in with the sky as well as the silver aluminum. But number two, there's maintenance, more maintenance required then because obviously paint peels, and this is galvanized aluminum.
So I
there-
understand, but I was saying in the past, we've had them,
There is a condition in here in our ordinance, it's number 17, that says color and finish. All towers and antennas shall be of a color that best allows them to blend into the surroundings as to reduce visual obtrusiveness or to camouflage the tower and antennas. The use of grays, blues, and greens may be appropriate. However, each case shall be evaluated by the town of Waukesha on an individual basis. All finishes shall be non-reflective. So it's up for debate.
Okay.
But it's definitely.
And again, we'll do what you want,
Sure.
but our recommendation is to go with the galvanized. That's what seems to work best.
well, I just wanted to make it aware for everybody here, so. The other concern I got, and I think, and we had, I don't remember, but in the past, we had some interruptions with televisions. So do you have seen any,
Well, I can tell you that's not coming from cell phones.
Okay.
And that is regulated by the FCC on a national, federal level. That's another item that the state statute says you can't regulate on. If there are interference, someone thinks there's interference, they should let us know. We'll investigate it, but it's never the cell phones, I can tell you that. They're on a whole different frequency than televisions and radios and other types of communications. But we are obligated under our license with the federal government to investigate and correct any potential interference. Typically, interference comes with each other, if at all. So if AT&T would come along, they'd have to work with us to make sure that Verizon didn't interfere.
thank you.
That completes your questions for the minute? Okay, Attorney Macy wanted to speak.
Well, I just, you're talking about protecting or having some kind of barrier for the tower. I think you should. You've been talking, the commission and board members, about having a protection for the tower. I think you need to also talk about what, if any, protection you want for the base stations. And also then lastly, of course, parking spaces. So I'm making a list, I'm sure Sean is, of things they'd have to come back with. They've indicated they would come back with samples of enclosures, pictures or samples of enclosures. I think, Mr. President, you raised that potentiality. I think the color, I'm just starting my list here, the color needs to be explored because it's part of our ordinance, so it has to be explored. And then the site plan showing what, if any, additional parking spaces could be provided. So I'm starting a short list. That's what I have so far from what people have said.
If I could piggyback onto that, there's a couple things that relate to security and fencing and buffers in our ordinance. One, and so it's in a couple of different locations. In one location, which is on page, on my staff report, page 7, it's 10, 10, Roman numeral 10, sub 4 says the total height of the structure shall not exceed 15 feet in height, which is fine. And the construction materials of the enclosure, construction materials shall consist of a brick exterior on all sides of the structure. And so they're showing brick enclosure for the ground equipment. They were showing a fence for the monopole tower, and we're exploring whether there's a fence there at all, or it's brick, or whatever it is. So that's one section, but there's another section that is on page 9, which is Roman numeral 14, security and fencing. It says the base of the tower and its associated accessory structures, now we know those are separated, shall be enclosed and fenced by a security fence not less than 6 feet in height and secured so that it's not accessible by the general public. Fence design, materials, colors shall reflect the character of the surrounding area as determined by the board. Upon receipt of recommendation from the Plan Commission, electric fencing is prohibited. And so, again, in terms of the materials that are presented on the plans, they're showing a 6-foot-high chain link fence plus barbed wire for that, with the ground equipment being the brick wall. And there's one more thing. And so Roman numeral 15, right below that, talks about a landscape buffer yard. A buffer yard of plant materials of sufficient maturity and size, as determined by the board, to immediately and effectively screen the equipment, cabinets, structures, and buildings from public view. Now, we know that it's going to be screened by a brick wall, so I wonder if that landscaping is necessary at all, because there's no screening necessarily. You're not going to see any of that base equipment. So.
And I might add that any landscaping would only take up
More
additional
space.
parking.
So I just wanted to mention those, as those are the remaining things that I saw in our ordinance in terms of conditions that haven't really been fully addressed yet.
Could I add to that, that if the property owner has another location where parking is permitted, Diamond's happy to pave 6 or 10 spots. If there's another, I don't know if it.
It's challenging.
My guess is they've used every square inch at this point.
It is challenging. I'm zooming in here, and so this is an
Well,
older.
I think that's something they're gonna have to come back
Sure,
with. We're
sure.
not
We're not gonna solve
design
that
it
tonight.
I think they're gonna have to prove, Attorney Krajcek, that every space is used, or, they can find 5 more spaces, whatever. I think it's on the to-do list of what I've heard people say. And so that's why I don't think we should do it tonight.
Should be investigated, yes.
But bear in mind, right out of the box, you're only losing 1 parking space.
Sure, but you've indicated it's up to 4 or 5 more.
Well, and your ordinance allows you to take a look at those folks when they come back. So if AT&T makes an application next year, that can be part of the process and part of their condition.
But we can't turn down a minor modification. It's a
And a
building permit.
co-location, right.
Well, it's not a minor one. When AT&T comes, they're gonna need to build and I'm using AT&T, I don't know if they're interested, but they're gonna need to build a base station as well.
Right.
So,
But if the compound size doesn't exceed a certain number, then it's a minor co-location modification, and so.
I'm happy to make that a condition if you'd like, that the next carrier has to come back for review of their base station. And you can talk about the parking issue at that time. But right now, you're only gonna lose 1.
Okay, other questions, comments? I have a couple, but I want to give others the opportunity to go first.
How close is the monopole to 164?
I could take a measurement.
It's more than 200 feet. I couldn't say exactly.
213. Yeah, it's low, it's exactly. 213.
And did Webco articulate any reason as to why it wasn't going to continue the existing contracts for these cellular towers?
I mean, what they've told us is, frankly, it's with the way the world has changed in the last 25 years. We're in the post 9/11 world these days. Security for their systems is at a much higher level these days, and their preference is not to have other parties co-locating on their facilities for that reason, which frankly makes sense. Just so you know, Verizon would much rather stay where they are. They don't want to have to build or pay for a new facility. Verizon would much rather stay where they are at this location. So if that was a possibility, that would have been accomplished.
Did you want to speak? Go ahead.
Yeah, as Claude mentions, security is an issue, escalating standards, but also they find it's no longer harmonious with their operations. When these things first went up 25 years ago, it was before WEPCO and ATC kind of severed or created a kind of 2 separate interests there. But again, back then, they didn't anticipate having to change equipment to get access to these structures as much. With the evolution of technology, their carriers like Verizon are constantly having every couple of years to go in and modify and change the actual equipment on the tower, and it's just not accessible. They cannot bring those lines offline. Obviously, they provide electricity to the whole area, metro area. So it just turned into, they just found it no longer to be suitable.
Other questions or comments? I have a couple, but I want to let others go first. Okay, maybe while folks are thinking, maybe this was mentioned and I didn't quite pick up on. I think you said the monopole is approximately 60 inches in diameter, if I heard that correctly. Is that tapered or not?
It tapers to the top, yes. It's
Any
much-
idea what the taper at the top is or diameter?
20 inches at the top.
So it goes from 60 to 20 is the taper.
I mean, this thing is carrying a substantial load if there's 3 or 4 carriers on there, so there has to be a solid base.
I understand. The next question, a couple has been covered with regard to the parking issue, and again, we know some of the history of it. Historically, I mean, people have routinely and regularly be parking. I don't know whether Sean can even put that picture back up, but basically, I mean, it's not, I mean, it's kind of the grass strip, if you will, north of the parking lot area, right, and go even over to the left end, particularly in that area. This kind of gives the village an opportunity to revisit that, whether that is occasioned by the fact that there's insufficient parking or its convenience or whatever, or what or not, but we need to take a look at that, and particularly if you're asking us or proposing to consider loosen parking spaces, that's problematic, that's an issue, so that needs to be addressed. And
Although, did I hear that your ordinance does not necessarily address the amount of parking required for ball fields?
Not for ball fields, but if we know it's substandard, then that's certainly reason enough to raise the question. Because in our current ordinance, we basically require that any parking that's displaced would have to be, would not be allowed if it's necessary or needed for the site.
Well, again, if there's a spot for expansion of parking, we're happy to look at that. But I would remind you once again, right out of the chute, you're only losing 1 space.
Where do the techs park if, say, Saturday, they have to come work on the pole and the lot's full?
Well, they'll have to park in the lot somewhere. But, you know, typically they're coming out during the day, not during the business week. So you know, unless there was an issue, they wouldn't be there on a Saturday or Sunday when you'd expect a full house there.
They do come out though on the weekend also.
I'm sorry?
They do come out on the weekend also though, correct?
If there's an issue, but not normally for maintenance, no.
We have another question, and maybe you touched on this or not, but I know a lot of discussion when that was developed for Five Diamonds about, and I know your drawings reflect the fact that there's I don't remember the number, but it's 120 feet or whatever, but significantly wide easement there for the high-tension wires, or what do you want to call them? Is there no concern or requirement about, I mean, that would certainly be in the fall zone for the monopole if it were to tip over, would it not? And is that not a concern or no regulation or anything about that at all?
We're more than 200 feet from the tower, but from the lines itself.
I want to talk about the lines, yeah. I mean, has that been vetted or fully addressed with them?
We didn't provide it in this case, but we can provide a letter from the tower manufacturer, from a licensed engineer, that certifies that the towers don't topple. They crumble, they collapse. So even if there was a failure, which in my 30 years in this business, the only tower failure I'm aware of in Wisconsin happened in Eau Claire with a 3,000-foot guide wire tower that was 50-some years old.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. But if they are engineered so that they would crumple or collapse on themselves rather than topple over. So if you'd like that letter, we could get
Well,
that
I
letter.
appreciate it, but I think what we need to have is a letter from, I mean, that's WEPCO's high voltage transmission lines, I think, isn't it? I mean, isn't that what's strung between those lattice work towers? I think what we need, and I'm not being disrespectful of your representation of the engineering aspects of it, but I think what we need is a letter from WEPCO that says they have reviewed what you're proposing to do, the location of that monopole, and I think they need to directly address any issue from their perspective in terms of their wiring being in the fall zone of the monopole. I think we absolutely need
Certainly can
that.
obtain that, but let me tell you that we do, when possible, we relocate these facilities with a new monopole right on the WEPCO easement. So they're built as close as 40 feet away in some cases. But I think we can easily get that letter from WEPCO on this.
That may well be, but sit on the side of the table for a minute, and I'm not being disrespectful about your comments about the performance of the tower or the unlikelihood that it would fall over or not, but I think we as the village need to have something from
We'll get it for
WEPCO
you. Yeah.
that says we have looked at these drawings, we know the height of it, we know the proposed location of it, we know our towers, we know our wiring, and it's good to go. I think
And
we absolutely need that.
I'll assure you now, we will get that letter, but I
Okay.
also wanted to provide the assurance that there's facilities that are closer to their lines that they've had no problem with in the past.
That may very well be, but all I'm saying, and it's not disrespectful to you whatsoever, but we need to hear it from them.
I hope you realize I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
No,
either.
I
I'm
understand.
trying to address the concern.
Just having a conversation, we're being careful here and we're doing our job.
Good.
Okay?
And I appreciate that.
One other thing that I have got, we talked about the parking and so forth. If there seems to be some sense or sentiment for a wall structure rather than nothing, and fencing, you're gonna show us some photographs, show us some options. I mean, I heard the word brick mentioned a number of times. I think it would be nice, and I'm making an assumption that we're going to see you again. That may be the wrong assumption, but I think that may be headed. I think it really would be helpful if you could even provide a physical sample or something. I mean, a brick strap, if you've done that before, here's what we propose. I don't, and I'll go the other part, and I'm just tossing my oar in the water. The question was asked, I'm not sure whether any kind of landscaping would serve a useful purpose. And again, we're not supposed to get too deep into that tonight, but I would sure like to see what you'd propose for masonry.
And we can certainly do that.
Good.
Again, we'd be happy to work with Mr. Malarkey on all of these
Sure.
issues, and if you were willing to allow him to have some discretion on these things, that's what I would ask for this evening. But if we need to come back, we'll come back.
Okay. Well, I'll just say he has great discretion. I'm going to say that in public. He has incredible judgment and great discretion, but the board and the commission may want to see this stuff, and that's just the way we work. Okay, who else? I want to take us off track on that, and we certainly can. We'll go back to the public again, but at the moment, we're here with the Plan Commission, staff, Attorney Macy, Engineer Janelli, Planner Malarkey. Anything from this side for the moment? Okay,
Could I
then
just
we'll go
ask
back.
when your next meeting would be?
Well, you are going to be back, if you're
Oh.
coming back, and we'll go to it in a minute, it'd be September 10th.
All right, and I think we're coming back for the other site then anyway, so that would be convenient for us, yes.
Okay, you used a baseball analogy before. Would that be a doubleheader, sir?
That'd be a double header, I like it.
Okay,
I
that's
like
kind of
it.
what I was thinking.
Just don't say get up, get up, get out of here.
All right. Thank you, Bob Euchre. All right, any other public comments, questions?
All right, thank you, folks.
Okay, well, I think we're at the point, and I may even turn to Attorney Macy, we've done this before, but we either have to close the public hearing, or we have to adjourn it or effectively continue it to September 10th. I would be advocating for the continuation of the public hearing. Do we need to take formal action on that, or what would your recommendation be?
Yes, you have to adjourn to a time and date certain, or you have to renotice it. So we always recommend to save the monies to adjourn to a specific date and time to adjourn the public hearing, to come back. But let's make sure we have our list correct before we adjourn our
Okay,
full
proceed.
list.
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Malarkey, I've got pictures of sample enclosures. Further information, I guess, on the color, if the board is curious. I mean, that's on your list, right, Mr. Malarkey?
Correct.
So they should address that. Site plan showing additional if there is additional locations for the parking spaces. I think from what I'm hearing, landscaping can be stricken from this list. Is that the consensus of the body? I see everyone's head shaking. Something from from WEPCO, that they reviewed it and they're aware of what's being proposed and they don't have issue with it. Did I state that correctly, Mr. President?
Sure, that's good enough.
And samples of the brick that would be at least around the buildings, the structures, and then potentially around the pole itself. That's what I have on my list, and we always try to give them a list so that we don't have to adjourn again. And I'll defer to the planner if he has anything further, or all the rest of you.
Anybody else on that?
As far as the additional parking, he's only talking about losing one spot, but we know he's presenting a situation that could possibly exacerbate that. How are we to address that going forward, or how has he addressed that? Do we need the owner here, or?
If you're asking me, and maybe Attorney Macy wants to weigh in that, yeah, I mean, I think there is an existing problem there now.
Yes.
Which we don't want to make worse.
Yes.
And I mean, I think it's the petitioner and the property owner.
Yes.
I think when they come back, they need to come back and address that issue. I mean, I'm going to call it insufficiency of parking at this point in time. I think it's their obligation or burden to come forward with solutions on that. I don't think it's up to the staff, the commission members, or the trustees for us to say, here's a place you could put more parking. And I mean, I think that frankly should even be in drawing form, not just words. So, I mean, I think that's an expectation. Does anybody disagree with that? Go.
I would recommend the same thing here, that we should ask for like 6 additional spots. I mean, if that's the maximum that possibly we're going to lose, that's what we should ask for.
I agree. Anybody disagree with Commissioner White? Anything else to add to the list? Attorney Macy did a good job of summarizing that. Anything else to add to that list? And
Not to that list, but if I may, before we adjourn, it appears that the board will be, that the staff is going to take this as a comeback with a draft conditional use next month. We did not have it here. That's not necessarily appropriate to have the draft here at, before you've even had the public hearing. I think you made a comment to that effect, but Sean is directed to come back with the CU, so we're not adjourning another month. Is that correct?
well, I think it is, and I mean, the practical reality that I believe we're dealing with this, and Sean pointed this out basically, in order to act in a timely manner, we need to act by the 7th of October. And I believe, if you look at here, I mean, our plan commission is meeting monthly, so if we got into, I mean, if we were heading into October, that would be the 8th would be the meeting.
Correct.
So in order to make the 7th, we really need to try to have this in the place that could be moved forward in September. I mean, that's a reality. We don't have much taste for calling special meetings. We've had enough of those. Okay, any other public comments? Anything else from the Plan Commission or the Village Board? If not, a motion at this time would apparently be in order to adjourn this public hearing until Thursday, September 10th, 2020, which time that meeting would begin at 6:30 p.m. Would someone like to make that motion? Don't all jump at once.
I'll make the motion to adjourn to the September 10th, 2020 meeting.
Okay.
At 6:30.
At 6:30 p.m. And is there a second to the motion?
I second it.
Okay, so the motion was by Commissioner White. It was seconded by Commissioner Piala. So we have a motion and second. Does everybody understand the motion and second? We'll do this by a voice vote, and Plan Commission members and trustees can all vote at the same time. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? I have that passing unanimously, 7-0. So we're done with that. Thank you very much. Item 10, then, I don't know that it's necessary to read it into the record, but that was discussion and possible action on the conditional use permit, site plan, and plan of operation. And as much as the public hearing has been adjourned, we will pass that item by. Okay? So thank you all very much. Somebody want to go get Mike, please? All right, let the record reflect, please, that trustee Durr returned to the meeting at 8:10 PM, and we're on to item number 11, which is hearing number 2. Notice is hereby given that a joint public hearing involving the Village of Waukesha Plan Commission and the Waukesha Village Board will be held on Thursday, August 13th, 2020, following joint public hearing number 1 beginning at 6:30 PM at the Waukesha Village Hall located at W250S 3567 Center Road, Waukesha, Wisconsin, to hear proposed conditional use for petitioner Keith Nyman, parens agent, close parens Verizon, located at W240 5197 Kunze Lane, tax key WAKT 140-199-7009, to construct a 160-foot monopole cell tower with 5-foot lightning rod above for the purposes of telecommunication services for Verizon Wireless and other wireless carriers / service providers in the market. And our agenda reflects that the petitioner requested the public hearing be adjourned to the September 10th, 2020 Village of Waukesha Plan Commission / Village Board meeting starting at 6:30 PM. Inasmuch as that is the request of the petitioner, I don't believe we need to take action on that, do we? We simply honor their request, or do you think we should?
We have to do a couple of things, Mr.
Okay.
President.
Go ahead.
First, we have to call the meeting, and we have to call the public hearing, because we have to then adjourn it. And so we don't
Okay.
want to renotice it.
Before we move forward, I was stepping out for 9, 10, and 11.
Okay, I'm sorry,
I'm just
then.
gonna step out again.
Yep, that was my,
If we're gonna take some kind of action, I don't.
that was my mistake, so if we're gonna vote, we'll be back to you, so let it reflect that, because the president goofed up, trustee Durr left the room again at 8:12. How about, you want to put that in the minutes?
Okay.
Okay.
I would like
go
to
ahead.
get from the planner, what date did they complete this application also?
So this application was, I have to check my records, but I believe it's the same date as the previous one, which would have been, let's see, that was,
July 7th. you said?
July 9th.
9th.
But I'd have to double check that. I don't have those records in front of me.
Well, have you had any conversation with them? They've caused us a problem by asking this not to be conducted tonight in order to waste 30 days to put it.
It is a tight frame. Is it possible we could ask them for an extension on the 90 days because they pulled the application?
Well, I would, if they were here, I would be asking them right now, and I certainly would ask Mr. President that the planner be directed
And I can, yeah.
to inquire that
Yeah,
from them.
I
We
think
don't
so.
like to bring the CU in at the meeting. It's too presumptuous.
Yeah, I mean, but the bottom line with this, if we're constrained to, if we're bound to that time constraint, and they requested it, then, I mean, even if there's a wish or desire, as we did tonight, to continue this, we're kind of out of options. I mean, that's the bottom line, right? So,
Well, we'd have to call a special meeting.
I understand that. So I think, is it appropriate, if we take a motion, this wasn't even noticed per se to open the public hearing, I would think we could do that as a procedural type of thing, and if we adjourn the public hearing, could the motion be with the directive to the planner Malarkey to basically see if we can get a time extension on it? Would that be appropriate to incorporate that into one motion or not?
You can incorporate it in the motion, or you can just direct them to do so as part of the public
Okay.
hearing.
What's the pleasure of the group on that? Should we start with the motion? Well, I guess I'll open the public hearing. The public hearing is open, and then we would actually be looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
Yeah, as a courtesy to any residents here, though, we should ask if they wish to speak, or they'll know that it'll be next month.
All right, fair enough. Does anybody want to speak on this issue at this time from the public? Or does anybody from the board want to speak on this issue at this time? Well, seemingly the answer to that is no.
Thank you.
So then, again, Attorney Macy told us you can either incorporate it in to the motion to direct the planner to seek the time extension, or we can leave that out of the motion and simply he'll understand to proceed that way. Do you have a pleasure, Sean, on how we approach that?
I would just contact the petitioner
All right.
and just
So
say,
then we
hey,
simply need a motion at this point in time to adjourn public hearing number 2 until September 10th, 2020 at 6:30 PM. That would be the motion. Would somebody like to make that motion? I'll make that motion. Is there a second to the motion?
A second.
Okay, Commissioner Sisney? Okay, so the motion by President Fisher, second by Commissioner Sisney, to adjourn public hearing number 2 here to September 10th, 2020 at 6:30 PM. Motion is made and seconded. Any further discussion? Then all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passed unanimously, 7-0. So now we're at the point again to see if somebody bring Mike back in.
Thank you for the procedural courtesy. I just didn't want to have to renotice it.
No, I get it. It makes sense.
And if somebody had been here and couldn't come back next month, we
I
want to
understand.
at least give them the courtesy.
Okay, let the record reflect that once again, trustee Durr is re-entering the room at 8:16, and now we are on to item 12 on the agenda, which is continuation of a public hearing involving the Village of Waukesha Plan Commission and the Waukesha Village Board. Will be held on Thursday. This is, I'm going to read it a bit. It is continuation of the public hearing which was held on Thursday, July 9th, 2020, beginning at 6:30 PM at the Waukesha Village Hall, located at W250 S3567 Center Road, Waukesha, Wisconsin, to hear proposed rezone for petitioner Gregory Thompson, tax keys WAKT 135-199-6000 and WAKT 135-199-6001 to rezone 3.49 acres from existing R2 residential to B3 general business district to allow storage units. That's the way this is written into the agenda as a joint public hearing. I would just note that on the agenda, this also appears as item 13, which is discussion, possible action. It also appears as item 14, exchanges some lots, and item 15, so this is on the agenda in multiple places, but this is the continuation of the public hearing. Let's once again just introduce, we have the petitioner, representative petitioners here. Would you folks like to introduce yourselves? And we'll just introduce and then we kind of let you sit back down, tell us who's here, please. Welcome.
Greg Thompson. I'm here. 6810 Cross Country Road, Verona.
Okay, thank you. Yep. We'll be back to you in a bit here. Planner Malarkey, are you going to a little bit school us on what happened before and where we're going tonight, please?
Sure. So last time the public hearing was adjourned until tonight. We kind of got stuck on the rezone portion of the property, and as was mentioned, there's a number of things on the agenda. There's the rezoning of the property, there's the sale of exchange of land between adjacent properties, site plan of operation, as well as signage request. And so we discussed the site layout last time. What we basically not got hung up on, but we spent the majority of time talking about access and site access and where the property should be accessed. And currently, I can bring up a site plan. What's shown in the current application for the property is site access to 164 on the west and Big Bend Road on the east. The petitioner has made it clear that he'd rather access from Big Bend Road only instead of Highway 164. And at the end of last meeting, we basically thought that access alone onto Big Bend Road is not the preferred option, and that if at all possible, we'd like access to 164 only, if that's a possibility to keep the commercial traffic off of Big Bend Road. Potentially, there might be access needed on Big Bend Road for emergency access. And then it was just basically decided that we needed to speak with DOT, the petitioner needed to speak with DOT to determine exactly what would be and wouldn't be approved, because as of last meeting, it was stated that DOT would not allow access from 164 unless it was a public road access. And so the idea was, what does a public road mean? Would it have to come all the way to Big Bend Road? Could it be cul-de-saced into the property, and then that would serve the purpose or not? It would certainly require a little bit of reorganization of the buildings, because public roadway is 66 feet of right-of-way, and so there might be some setback issues. So after that meeting, there's a couple other things on my list here that were to be addressed. From the direction of the Plan Commission and the board, it was basically wanted a little more information on the tenant mix, whether or not there was any complaints in other communities about this type of use. Again, access under 164. What will it look like along Big Bend Road in terms of landscaping and buffers? And then we also discussed a little bit about properties to the north and south, which are also planned for commercial use. How would they get access if it wasn't from 164 and it wasn't from Big Bend Road? Would there potentially be considerations for north-south access easements on the property, the subject property? And so we did speak with DOT, with the petitioner. I don't know if you want me to get into that or let the petitioner fill us in on that conversation and follow up with DOT since then.
I guess I'll leave it up to you or the petitioner. I think that information needs to be shared. If the petitioner wants to do that and describe or explain what happened in that teleconference, if you would, please.
Sure. The direction, or my short list was to talk to the DOT, and I think the last time I was here, I was saying, well, the DOT really doesn't want access off that state highway. And then I said, well, it wasn't clear whether or not you could have access and then maybe do a cul-de-sac, but it's in the discussion, I think, Mr. Fisher, you were on that line too, and they made it clear that, and we have an email determination from them. I just got it yesterday or the day before, and they said that if there is access off 164, that access needs to go through, it needs to be a public road, and it needs to intersect with Big Bend Road. And so I think the understanding from the village and also some neighbors is that they don't want it to go through from 164 to Big Bend. So I'm here to say that I'm proposing that we just do the original plan, come off of Big Bend Road, and I think the access off of that is okay with the fire department. We've already gone through that. And I also, I believe on my short list was people had concerns with the amount of traffic. And so what I did actually yesterday was I sat at a development I did 15 years ago. It's exactly the same number of buildings. It's the same building, and it's the same thing. And I sat there from 7:30 a.m. till 7:30 p.m. and I logged every car that came in. And I took the total number of times it went in and went out, and I've got some data here. And the total trips, and one trip is in and one trip is out. And so the average trips per hour were 7, which is about, per unit's only 3.5 per day. When you compare that to something like a single family home, national average is about 10 trips a day. So it's significantly less, although it is more, it's significantly less. And so I just want to hand this. So in addition to me logging all that and reporting on it, I took pictures every half hour of the site so you can actually see what traffic is in there. And so there's a number of pictures that you can just scroll through, because it really didn't change much. There's really of that, so the makeup of the traffic was 90% of it was from 3 different, that's 7:30, okay, 7:30 in the morning. And there's just, as you can see, way in the back, there's about 3 businesses back there. That van is back over here, and then there's one just past that van. So there's about that are auto-related, and they have pickup and drop-off. One is window tinting, one is upholstery repair, and one is, they call it simply automotive. I think it's some sort of parts or something like that for cars. And I just want to make it very clear that we don't, none of what I'm proposing, and in the staff report, it says very specifically that we're not going to allow any type of retail operation that has pickup and drop-off. So that's going to eliminate 90% of those trips. As you can see, there's 6 of those buildings that didn't have any action all day long. So that's at least half of the units that didn't have anything. So the majority of that traffic, and are you just flipping through?
I'm just going through, yeah.
You can see there's just hardly any action there. And so there's very little traffic, and I've done a number of these. There's 20 of them. I know that the makeup, it's very consistent. This was done 15 years ago, so we didn't, at that point, it was my very first one, I didn't recognize the auto-related, kind of the trip in, trip out stuff. So I'm totally comfortable not having that, because I don't actually like it either. So it's not that it's a huge amount of traffic either, but it is more. And so I'm content with having that as a restriction, which I've already agreed to. And then just kind of the summary, the important thing to note is that the number of trips that I've logged here after 12 hours is basically those 3 businesses. And so, again, there's going to be very little traffic. So I don't think the concern coming off of Big Bend is that it's not going to have a huge impact on the neighborhood. So,
Can I just ask a quick question? Yeah. That which you're projecting up on the screen, do we have that in our packets or not? Or is that, do we have that information? Or Sean, does anybody know? Have we seen that before?
It was given to me to display today. I do think that, Chris, you may have forwarded it on to...
Okay, well, we can play catch-up on that. I mean, I'm just observationally, I think that's very good and useful information. I'm just saying at this point in time, apparently we don't have it in hand, but that's good and useful information.
Okay.
I think at this point in time, we need to go back. This is a continuation of the public hearing, so we want, and we'll be back to you and some of the stuff, but we need to go back and let the public offer public comment at this time.
Can I just make one more? I just submitted something else also, and there was a question about this particular development being near residential, and I went back and I found, I was kind of caught off guard, but there's 6 developments. In the picture right here, there you can see there's a house right next to one of them. It's a smaller development, but if you go to the next one, sorry about that, but that's in Oak Creek, and just to the left there's 2 residential houses there. Go to the next one. These are more recent. That's Mequon. So if you go back to the trash dumpster.
Let me rotate these real quick.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. Yep, so you can see the house off to the left there. Yep, over in there. And there's another house next to it. That's Mequon. So back by the dumpster, see that woods back there? That's all residential houses back there. That is that's actually Waukesha, so that's Tesh Lane. So behind all that whole development in the back, I couldn't get a good picture of that, but that's all residential back there, right in their backyards there. This is a development I'm doing in Appleton, and so you can see the vacant, it's under construction now, but behind there is an entire residential development, so I think that's all I had on.
Okay, thank you. Comments from the public, please come forward. Anyone from the public want to speak? Okay, then we'll go to Plan Commission and Village Board. Go ahead.
Okay, I just need some clarification. Now, you said that there would be no retail, no pickup and drop off. What are you specifically going to allow?
So I did have a summary of different types of businesses, but they're small, kind of obscure type businesses, but it's customers that are not coming to them. So, for instance, a carpet cleaner. he parks his van, he's got one van, and he goes out during the day and he comes back. People don't come to him. And so it's businesses like that.
What about employees?
It's limited to, I believe it was two.
Yeah, if I could maybe just quickly read what the language that's proposed is that, so it says general businesses, trades, and personal workspace, including offices, indoor storage, and workshops limited to no more than 2 employees on site. So no businesses could have more than 2 employees on site at any time. On-site retail, service businesses which require customer drop-off and pickup, commercial fabrication and manufacturing, overnight outdoor parking, overnight sleeping in units, and outdoor storage are prohibited.
I'd even go as far as to drop the 2 employees to 1, because I know the types of businesses that are in here, and they just don't have employees. It's usually a sole operator and maybe somebody helping them, but they're usually out in the field, so they're not hanging out there. And again, probably half of them you can see from those pictures, they're hobbyists and workshops, so they don't frequent it too often.
Okay. I want to explore a bit of an area with you, and it's about, I mean, my largest concern all along about this is about access. And I mean, I think you've demonstrated, I have never envisioned, I mean, this by any measure, this is not high traffic count, high traffic volume. I want to go back for a minute to the multiple person teleconference with representatives from the DOT. I mean, it was a Zoom thing without video for me. I don't know whether other people could see each other, but just, I don't know, focus in on a bit. But on behalf of the village here, Planner Malarkey, Engineer Janelli, I think you were on that call, as was I. I know you were on there, and I don't remember, were there 3, 4 people from the DOT or what or not?
Yeah.
I'm a little bit guessing on that. And is there anybody from the DOT here tonight? Wisconsin DOT? And I want to kind of try to, I guess, capsulize what I am struggling with this, okay? And want to try to make this happen. Can you flip the drawing back up there with the through?
Sure.
The through street or the through driveway or whatever you want to call it. And what we'd kind of heard last is the DOT wouldn't allow a private driveway there, but they'd allow a public street. I mean, I think, isn't that the essence of what was said? And yes, we did have some discussion about access or easements to property to the north or south. And I'll cut the DOT a little bit of a slack for a minute, but I mean, they got into discussions of needing 300 feet of stacking distance and all that kind of stuff. I mean, certainly by the volume of traffic that is generated from your development, nobody is going to say you need 300 feet of stacking distance. It just doesn't match up. Here's mine. I want to just read this in quickly. This is a concern, and then I'll express my concern and frustration. But we've got, and I think that was just passed out tonight, we've got this email communication from Art Bauman from the DOT, which, and it looks to me like he even a little bit pushed him to get a response to it. And I think it's short, but it's worthy reading in. It's addressed to you, Mr. Thompson. It says, after much internal discussion, WISDOT is going to maintain our requirement that any access to Wisconsin 164 from this parcel will have to be a public street, okay, and that the street must connect to Big Bend Road, which, I mean, whether that's a street or driveway, that's what that illustrates. This has been our consistent requirement with anyone looking to develop this parcel and will continue to be the requirement. If the Village of Waukesha decides that you can proceed with development of this parcel under these conditions, please provide a preliminary site plan and CSM to WISDOT for review and approval. Let Kevin Kinke, he's, I think, the permits coordinator for Wisconsin Department of Transportation, let me know if you have any questions. And I'm just express my point of view on this. This concerns me, and as a follow-up to the discussion, because we had kind of a free and open discussion, and I read this, and I don't see the rationale or explanation for that. So I'm going to be a little bit argumentative for a minute. I mean, if it's positioned, fine, but what backs it up? And this was discussed a bit in the teleconference, and I think the answer kind of was as well, so, you know, residential traffic could flow through there to Big Bend Road, or that's kind of part of what I got out of it, which I think, at least from my point of view, is exactly what we don't want to have. So I'm going to invite you Planner Malarkey, Engineer Janelli, am I miscasting that? Or, I mean, we've got this thing that says we're going to insist on a connection to Big Bend Road, but it gives no rationale to that whatsoever from a traffic safety point of view or whatever, and I think that's the last thing in the world we want. So,
And may I make one comment?
sure,
Not only no rationale or basis, no legal basis.
okay.
I would have been on that call, I would have said, what is your legal basis for requiring this?
Yeah.
They didn't make the condition until the writing, I guess.
No,
We
there
did, we
was
did
a-
discuss some of it, and the stacking was part of it, but as you mentioned, it doesn't, the particular business doesn't really warrant
Yeah.
300 feet of stacking for a car every hour.
I mean, fair enough, and if I'm mischaracterizing it, say so, but I mean, there was discussion and vacillation and different points of view and everything, but I'm at the end of the day, so, and they said after much more internal discussion, and I guess I am being a little bit pushy on it, and I'm trying to be helpful, because I'm hoping we can get this thing to move forward. I want others to have an opportunity to talk, but this gives me nothing. It simply gives no rationale for it, and I think as much time and effort as people invested in this, I think they need to give a rationale or an explanation. Maybe if you give them some of that information about the traffic volume, I still say they should come off of 164. It should be cul-de-sac with a short cul-de-sac, and it's a public road, and we move on, and no connection to Big Bend Road. So be quiet for a minute, but I mean, anybody else tell me? I mean, isn't
Well, first
this
of all, I did not
empty?
push them to that email. We had that meeting a long time ago, and I made it very clear, and they've had multiple internal discussions and meetings. That's just not evident in the, it was getting to this meeting, I said, are you guys done? And yeah, we've had these meetings, and we're still discussing it. I was not privy to their internal discussions, but from the very get-go, they have made it clear to me, and I'm not going to get into all their reasons and rationale, but I made it clear at the last meeting, they wanted a public road all the way through to Big Bend, and that is what they're saying, and they're not backing off on that. For what reason they have, that I can't tell you.
I mean, it's clear. I understand what they're saying. It's right here in writing. But all I'm saying is I think the village, I guess you as a petitioner, I think that we're entitled to say, please explain. And maybe there's a rationale for it. I see no rationale whatsoever.
So why don't we write them back and ask them?
Well, that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay?
I mean, does anybody else disagree? I don't want to be too pushy on this, but I mean, this gives us nothing.
I agree. I think they have to be accountable for their decision on this, and I agree with Mike. He says, you know, they're not, let's push it forward and ask them why not.
I mean,
This is kind of what we want.
I
This
mean,
has been our
we're
hang-up for
sitting
this.
here haggling over
Yeah.
an opinion of people who aren't here. There's no point in talking about it
I
anymore.
understand that. Well, if you're on board with me, I'm trying to find out whether people are on board or am I heading in the wrong direction. Are you receptive to the village pushing that issue or not?
Well, at this point, I've had this on the table since January.
I understand.
Okay? And I've done everything that you've asked me to do, and I did specifically. I orchestrated a meeting with the DOT. You were involved in the meeting. I involved the the planner and the engineer. They've had opportunities to ask those questions specifically. You had an opportunity. I've done everything that I had to do, and I was specifically directed last time to do it. And so it's getting a little frustrating. Okay, so I've done that, and they don't want access off a state highway for such a small, my guess is just that one property. You're putting in a public road for one property, because the easements across to the north and south, that wasn't gonna work. You had, and I don't recall specifically, but there was one gal on, Susan Voigt was expressing her, hey, you can't have these access
It was
roads.
another distance issue. It was the
Yeah.
distance of where the easement would be with the north-south traffic to get to the property north and south. No matter where it was put on the property, as far as they were concerned, wouldn't be far enough in to make sure that there wasn't queuing for the two turns to get into the
Yeah.
property and then make the north or south turn. So that was what they'd said, but then they still said, we're gonna go back and talk about it, we'll think about it. But
Yeah.
that was the rationale for the meeting.
I even asked them specifically, can I get a single user access? At the last bit, I said, can I get a single user access off 164? And they said they would consider it. And that's what, then they adjourned or whatever, and this is what they came up with. They had their internal discussions, and this is what they came up with. So, I don't know what else to do.
Okay, trustees, plan commission members, jump in, please. please.
I got something. I think July 9th of 2020, I spoke that they already had a 24 and a half foot curb cut already there, that I would recommend that they come off 164 and not have a through street access to Big Bend Road. And I still stand on that point. And I go back to this single user access. I never heard of that before, but well, I tell you what, if we had any push here in the town, I think something that I'd like to be brought back up and see if we could help you do that, because that sounds something that we should do.
You're asking me to get into a legal battle with the state of Wisconsin? I mean, I'd have to, I mean, they're gonna deny the permit. They've already denied the permit once for access off 164, because I actually applied, and they denied it. And so, the only way, and actually, I think maybe even the appeal right is over with, but you're asking me to do something that is extraordinary, that is certainly shouldn't be in. I've got 2 roads. I want to do this development. I don't create any traffic on, hardly any traffic off of Big Bend. There is absolutely no reason why I can't come off of Big Bend, and this is, it's simple. And now you're making me go through this whole hoops, and I've gone through it, and I've gone to the state, and I've done what I'm supposed to do. And I did what you asked. And the state has spoken, and they've spoken more than once. And it's just, I don't think that's fair to put me through that.
Let's just ask it this way, for the sake of discussion. They're demanding a public street through there. Are you prepared to construct that as a public street all the way through there?
No, the public street, well, because of the right-of-ways, the setbacks and everything, it chews up a huge portion of that lot. I can't even get close to doing that development. That's not even on the table. It's not even close. So there's no way I could put a public street in and accommodate. It wouldn't be worth it. It's not even close.
I mean, from my point of view, I don't understand why, as a board, we would have an objection of this coming off Big Bend Road. He has demonstrated that these buildings are about as low impact and residential-esque as you can possibly be. This is on our land use plan as commercial. And I just can't picture a more low impact commercial use. Unless we're basically gonna say that the places where we have commercial designated on our comprehensive land use plan are just pretty much for show only. I mean, my goodness. And Big Bend Road, I know people like to think that it's just a sleepy country road. Big Bend Road by the village of Waukesha is recognized as a main road. In terms of snow plowing, Big Bend and Glendale and a few other streets are where we start and where we focus our attention, because it is not a residential road. It is a through road. It is a main thoroughfare for the village of Waukesha. It is not 164, I understand that, and it's not even or Oakdale, but it is one of the main roads of Big Bend Road. I mean, if we're not gonna develop on this road, we're not gonna develop anywhere ever for the dozen or so cars a day that he's gonna have.
I would also agree with everything that Trustee Dewar had said. I wasn't particularly impressed with your one-day observation of the property. That could very easily be anecdotal. But from the very beginning, with the expense of these buildings, I mean, these aren't little sheds or anything. These are fairly nice construction. And I have seen these before, and I do believe what you're telling us, that the traffic is extremely low, probably lower than if they were residential. I was convinced of that the last time we spoke of this. So I would concur with everything that Trustee Dewar is saying.
Thank you. To be fair about this too, and I guess you have the Waukesha
Yes.
buildings too, correct?
Yes.
And I spent an hour over there one day, just, I think it was around 10 o'clock in the morning, just to watch the traffic, to get an idea if, you know, what you said is true. And I think I counted one car left the complex in an hour's time on a weekday morning. So I had to be convinced myself that there was a low-density thing. And I give you credit for spending all the time counting those cars, because that hour that I spent there was about one of the most boring hours I've spent in a long time. But
It was grueling.
yeah, so it's not fun. So I give you all kinds of kudos for spending a day doing that. I don't know if you kept your sanity or not.
If there was more traffic, it would have been okay.
Yeah, you got counting cars, you know, but it helps, but there's nothing to count. And I kind of felt my mind at ease a little bit about the volume of traffic that this is going to generate. And as he said, Big Bend Road is not exactly a sleepy little country road. It used to be 164 at one time. I mean, that was Highway F years ago before 164 was built, and it was a main county highway. So it is what it is. It's a main thoroughfare. It serves all the subdivisions to the south that were developed over the years too, and that's the bulk of the traffic on there is the subdivisions to the south. So I just don't see the volume of traffic coming out of this development that people are thinking. So that's my 2 cents worth on the traffic study. So.
Other comments, questions? Do we have public comment? Go ahead.
I just have one question for the engineer. If this were to only be coming off of Big Bend Road, have you given consideration of what type of intersection you're going to require?
Yeah, the town has standards for the type of intersection that we'll need to have there, so.
The reason I ask, it's a very pointed question. Can we pull up is that the GIS?
Yeah, there's the location.
And the reason I'm asking is because they're obviously going to dedicate, I assume, for parcel 996001, they own to the center line of the road. They're going to be dedicating that area, correct?
Well, as you recall, there's no CSM as part of this. It's going to be a sale or exchange of land.
We're going to have to require a dedication. We can't allow them not to own to the center line of the road. You didn't consider that?
No, we haven't talked about that.
I've never seen a community allow a development to occur where they don't get the right of way.
Right, but there's no land division, there's no CSM, there's no nothing. And so if they were just doing it on the south parcel, for instance, and the parcel existed, we wouldn't necessarily require them to dedicate that piece, would we?
If someone were going to build a business development, absolutely.
And make them do a CSM for it? I don't know.
The only way, the cleanest way to do it is by a CSM.
Sure, that certainly is, but I guess I just don't know if that's for a parcel where there's not a land division required, if we would make them do a CSM just to dedicate the land. Maybe that is the way things have been done here. I just don't know.
So you're measuring how are you measuring the setback for those buildings off of Big Bend Road then?
The assumed, where the assumed right-of-way would be.
Well,
If you look at
I'm taken back. I've never seen a community allow someone to do a major development without requiring dedication of the right of way.
See, if you look at their plans, you can see it's dotted in here where the right-of-way would be. And so the setback is more than enough for what they're proposing there.
How is it that we don't have that now? Is it just because it
was never
the way it's
platted.
always been?
It was a remnant, never platted,
Okay.
never, there was no formal land division there.
Nope, got it, okay.
I've contacted Lynch Engineering to do the lot line adjustment, but it's technically actually recorded as a CSM, so I don't think it would be a problem for them to add that. I don't have an issue with it.
Okay, and but that wasn't even my point.
Oh.
I guess I just assumed that. But go back to the GIS if you
Sure.
may, please. And then, Mr. Gianelli, you might note, I don't know if you're going to require, and help me out here, what's it called when someone wants to turn left into this complex and you build a left turn lane? Well, you have a left turn lane, but then you gotta build so they can get around the people who are turning left. Bypass lane, is that?
Yeah, XLB lanes. I don't know that it'd be warranted with it.
Because you're gonna have a problem doing it because we don't own the right of way.
Correct.
And this happened in the town of Genesee for the well company. They had to buy the right-of-way across the street in order to put in, now that was State Trunk Highway 83, so that was a whole different ballgame and a different intersection. But I don't want to get 99% down the road and find out he can't build the intersection you're going to require him to build because we don't have the right-of-way of the one lot across the street. Is everybody following what I'm saying? If you look at where the dedication is, there's another lot across the street that's never been platted that they own to the center line also.
Right.
But-
So, sorry, go ahead.
Pardon?
You wouldn't require let's step away from the XL decel lane, because that would be on the other side of the road. You wouldn't require a loop around lane for somebody going north and turning left. I mean, we don't require that for any residential, and this is less of an impact than that.
I think this would be considered a driveway, basically.
Right.
And there's a standard for the driveway. There's probably going to be some flares over
Okay.
the driveway.
I just wanted, as I said, we ran into this huge problem.
I get it.
And we didn't bring it up at the time, and I don't want it to be a problem down the road.
If that, I go back to the site plan again, and I'm asking, because we've been over this so many times, but if that were, I mean, that is, what you're illustrating there, that is connected also to 164 for emergency egress? Was that not what the fire chief was requiring?
I've actually submitted a revised site plan which shows the access eliminated. Something similar to that, but I thought I had something more formal.
Yeah, let me look.
Yeah.
People, help me out here though, but I thought the fire chief said that he would require, he wouldn't simply allow access from Big Bend Road.
No,
Is my memory incorrect on
That's
that?
incorrect.
That's
He said
incorrect.
Big Bend Road would be acceptable.
Big Bend Road alone?
Yes.
Yeah, in my staff report at the top of
Okay.
page 6, he wrote, after further review of hydrant and water resources in the area and the possible application of the proposed structures occupied on the site, the fire department would make this recommendation. Allow one access off of Big Bend Road with a continuous driveway paved width of 24 feet through the development. This would include the driving lanes north and south off the access driveway. We would request the turn radius of the intersections of the access driveway and the north-south drive lanes be larger to accommodate our ladder truck. Parking along the access drive and north-south drive lanes would be prohibited except for designated parking stalls. Parked vehicles may not extend onto the 24-foot driving lane. The access drive and driving lanes must be clear of all obstructions, vegetation, and snow at all times.
So I increase the depth of the parking and the width of the aisle. And
Okay.
then you can see the radiuses as they turn up into
Okay.
the north and to the south.
All right, thank you.
The engineer mentioned that this would be classified as a driveway. So is this going to, being it classified as a driveway, does this address the issues of possible easement problems and turnarounds on the road?
I'm sorry, I guess I don't understand your
Well, you
question.
said that this is really considered a driveway only.
Correct.
The attorney mentioned that he was concerned about down the road having a problem on Big Bend making a left turn.
Mhm.
Being that if somebody has a problem with that, being that it's classified a driveway, that is a non-issue. We don't run into problems.
I think we'll have to evaluate signage on Big Bend, but, and maybe speed limit on Big Bend, but those are all the things that we'll have to deal with when we start looking at site plan of operation stuff.
Okay.
But I think what we're gonna see here is a driveway with some tapers, XL, decel lanes on the west side, and that's about it.
Was there public comment or some person or persons want to make public comment? Let's give the public an opportunity to comment.
Lori Smart, West 238, South 3910, Big Bend Road. And I have a couple of questions for Mr. Thompson. I'm going to backtrack just a moment because they are kind of operational questions. First, in the traffic study that was done, if I heard right, were there 3 businesses that you were taking a look at?
Address the question to
I'm
us. We
sorry.
may get
Okay.
the answer. That's fine.
Yes, were there 3 businesses? And if so, to me, that doesn't sound like apples to apples to what this development would be with approximately 24 businesses. And my second question is, if these are condo storage units, my understanding is then that they are each separately owned. And when they are separately owned, who will take a look at what type of businesses they are? I mean, who will enforce that? And if I go in and if I buy one and if I have a business there and then I decide a year later to sell it, who's to say I'm not going to sell it to the type of business that is not being listed as a potential type of business? And that's all. Thank
Okay,
you.
I think we get some answers to that. Sean, do you want, or Attorney Macy, do you want to answer that? Last question she had.
The last question?
Yeah.
Or the
or
first, the last
both.
question, who enforces what type of businesses? Well, we would, we talked about requiring a separate plan of operation, or separate plan of operation for each new business that goes in. We haven't gotten that far yet in the site plan discussion, but that is one of the discussion items as to whether give it a carte blanche approval for site plan for everything, or to require every time a new business comes in to bring it back to the plan commission, to the board, and review it and issue them an operation permit for each one. So we have not gotten there yet, but that's one way to address that, that issue.
I think, well, I'm just going to answer. There was 3 businesses out of the 24 units. The rest, those are the only ones that are operating there that entire day.
The rest are occupied, though?
The rest, yeah, it's fully occupied, and
Fully
it's been
occupied, yeah.
that. So it's, and then I think what we're getting down to more is an enforcement issue. It's kind of a self-cleansing thing, because we have rules, and the people are notified as to what you can and can't do there. It's very specific, and some of the, you can't, no auto repair, no welding or woodworking for commercial purposes. We can list certain conditions. I have no problem with that. It becomes somewhat of a practical issue if we can just narrow and describe what kinds of businesses are there that, and they fall under this category. Then, I mean, every time a unit sells or what, they'd have to come back to a meeting and do this whole plan of operation. I don't know if they have anything internally that, like in other municipalities, they just have, they do have a, I think it's called a plan of operation. It's a simple form you fill out and you just submit it to the village or whatever, and then they kind of look at it. Okay, yeah, it's more of an administrative thing. I don't think that would be a problem. But to actually go through the meetings and everything like that, I'm just trying to make it a little easier for that.
Well, I'll say from my point of view that in multi-tenant business, what you would consider a strip mall, I mean, every time those change, somebody has to come in and do a new site plan of operation. I don't know how that's all that dissimilar from this.
We do not have a shortcut procedure. City of Waukesha might, the used to, we don't.
Right.
They will all be required to come in. Some of them might even need a conditional use, depending on what they're gonna do.
Right.
There's no way they can get around having to bring in their site plan and plan of operation to the best of my knowledge.
So the answer to Ms. Smart is that's how it would be policed, is that if there's a change in business, whether it be the existing owner or not, they'd have to do a separate site plan of operation, come before the board.
Not necessarily a site plan, but just come and tell us what your operation's gonna be. And
Perhaps,
you know,
right.
Is that, and my understanding is that it's done with every commercial property? Is that how?
Yep.
Okay. If that's the way you operate, then that's the way it's gotta be.
Yep.
Okay with that.
Other We're still in the public hearing, comments,
I question on the
questions?
traffic study, as long as the
Oh.
petitioner's up there.
Okay, address that,
Was
please.
that answered? I'm sorry. The only 3 businesses were open, but there were 24.
It's fully occupied.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You're right.
Okay, was there another member of the public wish to speak?
Sandy Hom, West 230, South 3827, Milky Way Road. I had an opportunity last week to visit someone at South 4190 of Big Bend Road, and I know that one of our supervisors lives off of Big Bend and probably uses this section. But I was pulling out of their driveway and turning south. So I was on the east side of Big Bend and turning south. And it's just terribly fast traffic on the road. I don't know whether that speaks to it being a big road or people think it's a small road, but the traffic is fast. And even pulling in, coming north off of Lonsdale and pulling into the east, I had to watch in my rearview mirror that I didn't get rear-ended. So if this is going to happen, I would certainly recommend, I don't know what the legalities are with the county or the town or village with speed limits, but the section from Lonsdale to 164, I would much rather see that posted at 25 miles per hour instead of 35 miles per hour. It's pretty dangerous right in that section from Lonsdale with the curve and whatnot. Thank you.
Thank you. Name and address, please, and proceed.
Kevin Korth, West 238, South 3890, Big Bend Road. The last time we were here, a month ago, we talked about doing a traffic study, and I don't know if anybody agreed to whether or not a professional traffic study was going to be done, but I guess I'm asking the board, and not to any disrespect of the efforts that the developer put forward and that you went and visited the Waukesha site, but I can't help but to feel like the traffic study is biased, being performed by the developer. So I guess I just asked the board if you're considering doing a professional traffic study or if we're accepting the developer's traffic study that he performed.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Tim Hofstadter, live at 17750 Tremont Street in Brookfield. I represent the estate of Delbon Carol Hofstadter in selling, I'm trying to sell this land. I think you all know that because you were the last ones who were trying to buy it. My question is, how do you do a traffic study? There's nothing there. What are you studying? Are you going to set up a study in Waukesha where his other development is? I think he's come through with what we need here.
Thank you. Next. Anybody else want to speak at the public hearing? If not, we're, I think, winding along the place here, whether we're going to continue this public hearing or close the public hearing. That's what's coming next. Anybody see a need to continue the public hearing? Go.
I have one more comment. Maybe this is the wrong place, but we always talked about how we are going to enter north and south lots next to his development. If we do let them come off of Big Bend Road, or the north and south lots also more than likely will be coming off of Big Bend Road too, I believe, correct?
Thank you. Anybody else? Is there a motion to close the public hearing? Is that in order at this time?
I think you just close it.
I just need to remind everybody, this is You have to decide based on everything. You can't add conditions, you can't change anything. once the
This is
public-
just a rezoning though. This is not,
Okay,
this is not conditional use.
all right. They have to base their decision on what they've heard at the hearing.
Why don't you just refresh everybody? It's simplistic, Sean, but the rezoning, what this is really focusing on, why don't you just recapture that very quickly so everybody understands what this
Yeah.
public hearing is about?
No problem. If you want to follow along, it's page 7 of my staff report. And so this is for the rezoning of both the properties to the area that's from, the area excluding the single-family home as shown in the site plan. The property would be rezoned from R2 residential to B3 general business district limited to the WAQT 135-199-6001 as adjusted per the exchange of land between properties. The B3 zoning for the property is limited to the following uses: general businesses, trades, and personal workspace, including offices, indoor storage, and workshops limited to no more than 2 employees on site. On-site retail, service businesses which require customer drop-off and pickup, customer fabrication and manufacturing, overnight outdoor parking, overnight sleep-in units, and outdoor storage are prohibited. Rezone shall not be in full force and effect until the exchange of land is approved by the Village Plan Commission and recorded with the County Register of Deeds. The rezone shall not be in full force and effect until the petitioner obtains approval of a site plan of operation from the Village of Waukesha, and then the standard reimbursement condition.
Okay, so everybody understands what the purpose of this public hearing was. Is there any further discussion? If not, I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, so the motion was by Trustee Durr, second by Commissioner Piala to close the public hearing. Any discussion? If not, all will proceed to vote. All in favor of the motion to close the public hearing indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes unanimously 8-0. I think we're going to take about a 5-minute comfort break on the watch, the clock in back there. We'll pause from 9:07 to 9:12 and resume at that time.